Hi, Linda Rose back again. Today I've got two subjects to talk about, both of them related to water. One is a story I think you'll like because it's kind of funny in a way, and it's about Blackwater. Blackwater today is the topic. Blackwater is the water that is funneled into a holding tank for dumping later, or if you're hooked up to a formal sewer system, you can have a hose that hooks you up, but you're still dumping. And you're going to say, well, even if you're hooked up to the formal sewer, you still have to do this dumping? Yes, it's a strange phenomenon. And the other story about water is, I forgot my memory. Let me check my notes. Oh yes, it's about fresh water from rain coming in the window. Okay, so on with my stories today that I'm sure you're going to love. First story, I will call it Maxine's story. Maxine was new to RVing and really didn't care if she was in an RV or not. She was just looking for inexpensive accommodation. And she rented a little trailer across the way from me many, many years ago. And she didn't know about dumping. Dumping is a term for letting it fly. We maintain our poop in our box until we have to get rid of it, until it's full. Some people, like me, I have a gauge that shows a red light on my wall. Not to be trusted if you've got one, because sometimes those gauges in those tanks get gunked up, if you can imagine, and they're not working properly, so better to test. And my test for my toilet is when I can see the water coming up the throat of the toilet. I'll call it the throat for lack of a better word. When I can see that water or hear it, I know it's pretty much close to the time when that tank's going to be full. And I go out and do the dumping. And I'm permanently parked right now because I've been sick for quite a while. And some of you might have saw my last video where I broadcast from my sick bed in the dark, and it seemed to go over okay. I just had a couple little things to say while I was ill in bed. So I'm better today. So there's a valve there. It's usually a pull valve, and you pull it full handle like this. You're hanging onto a handle and you're pulling. Basically, most of them are underneath the body of your vehicle, and they go in and out, straight in and out. That's all it is. There's also one holding tank and valve for keeping and closing and opening and dumping the gray water. Gray water is just the water coming out of your sinks and your shower and your bathtub and whatever water. I don't know, I can't imagine what other water you might have. But anyway, that's gray water. But I want to touch about Maxine's Blackwater story. I don't know how long she was there, maybe a year. And she was using toilet paper. And there are special toilet papers, but you really don't need to waste your money on that. When I get finished telling you why, you'll love it. Another money-saving tip. Anyway, her toilet backed up completely, even though she left it wide open and never dumped for about a year. And it backed up because the functioning mechanics of that system works with gravity. And you can imagine if you have all of that heavy sitting at the top of the hill but nothing to push it down. And the way that it works is if you've got a lot of water in there, along with the heavy, when you open the valve, the system of the water on a slight angle down the hill, if you will, pushes that out. So there's got to be a little gravity or field of force with all that water behind it to move it on out and down to the dump. And if you use toilet paper, it's going to complicate the composition, if you will, of the object that needs to be dumped or pushed down the hill. So you want to keep the flap shut. You want to keep the valve done up, closed tight, and have as much water in that tank as possible in order to move it out, clean it out. I even like to run some fresh water through there. Doesn't have to be fresh water, I meant any kind of water will do, but I like to run it through there after I've dumped, just to make sure I've got all the little bits and pieces that I can get out. So poor old Maxine had to hire someone to come and try to unplug that, and it was just impossible. It was hard as a stone, permanently there. So they had to do the nasty job of removing the whole tank from the underneath of the trailer and replacing it, which labor where I'm at is very high, so it cost a lot of money. For her lack of knowledge, lack of experience, nobody ever thought to tell her, I guess. I don't know how that happened, but I'm telling you now, you save it. You save it. And if you're traveling with it, then there are places along the way, at gas stations or whatever, service stations, where they will offer you, maybe for a small fee, a dump to hook up to actually dump, open your valve and let it fly. Okay, so the toilet paper issue is one that I experienced when I moved here, because my septic tank outside my trailer, which is hooked up to the city sewer system some way, it backed up and paper came up out of the ground everywhere, and we could define the shape and size of that septic tank that was holding based on where all the pieces of toilet paper were lying on the ground, along with the mushy mud that was sitting there. So I decided that my experience of living for 5 years in Mexico was going to pay off, and I'll trade this topic with you. I'll trade this because it is an invaluable lesson. If you lived in this country 60, 70 years ago, you maybe remember the outhouse and the Sears catalog were the options for which page you're going to use to wipe. It's not like Charmin. It wasn't soft, but it did the job. So I decided to not ever flush toilet paper in my system again. Okay, the next topic that I wanted to talk to you about with water was rainwater. My trailer happens to be a very well-built trailer, but the windows will leak when it rains with the rain traveling horizontally. This happens when you have very high winds up in the mountains where I'm at, and it blows the water somehow right through the seal system of the windows. I had my windows shut tight, as tight as you could get them. There's little brushes and rubber liners that go around the windows to keep them airtight. And yet when it rained that night, and it rained hard, and it rained all night, it rained good, as they say. It was a good rain. I woke up in the morning and the water had come in and filled up the track that the window slides on the bottom, and ran down the wall, which was okay, no damage done there, but there was so much water that it ran to the edge of the counter and soaked the carpeting. It was the kitchen window above the kitchen counter, and at the far end of the counter into the living room there's carpeting. So that was soaked. But the worst part was, when I looked, the covering, I want to call it formica, for lack of a better word, I'm not knowledgeable. The covering on the countertop lifted up at the edge where it was glued down. Somehow, I guess that glue was not water resistant so much, but it lifted up a good 3-4 inches high. And it was a simple solution once I got over the shock of it. And I don't know that there's anything you can do about that, because I can't insulate my windows any better than I have other than I've now covered them for the summer with special covering that won't even let the light in because they're facing west and the heat is unbearable from the sun in Arizona. Giving away my location. Anyway, I was able to take ordinary children's school glue, Elmer's glue paste, and paste that back down and place some heavy objects on it because I didn't have a clamp that would work on that situation, and there was more than clamping could do anyway. And waited a couple of days, and it's been fine ever since. But I thought you would like those 2 stories about water. Both of them have pretty good happy endings. Maxine's moved away. She's living a couple doors down the road. And I see her from time to time. And my countertop is working just fine. Thank you very much. And it was good to make this video again. Good to see y'all. Good to have you reading. Appreciate all your comments. Keep them coming. Bye-bye.